Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs anyway. My name is Adam Mamawala. I am one of them. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin, it is time to talk about the 2023 season. Are you emotionally prepared?
I think I am, because I find myself these days as a Cubs fan, looking back is easier than looking forward. So, I am emotionally prepared to talk about this 2023 year, which was, as we made some predictions at the beginning of the year. Every year we've done this podcast, we've done a season preview. So we're going to look back at some of the predictions we made and how close or far we were on those. And, this year had some surprises, but a lot of stuff we knew at the beginning, it turns out. It was so good for us, I guess. But I guess maybe to start things off as we look back on 2023, let's start happy. What are your favorite moments? It can be big things, it can be single game, single moment. What are the highlights if you look back at 2023 and be like, that was fun? What are some of those things?
Well, I mean, I think for me the big moment and the big inflection point is the Cubs playing themselves into being buyers, which is not something that I thought was going to happen. And the signature moments of the year for me are the Tauch Off, the home run robbery during that stretch of games in St. Louis, and obviously the Christopher Morel walk off against the White Sox. For me, I feel like is the easy moment of the year.
Me too.
And it's one of those things where the season essentially went exactly how I thought it would. I just didn't expect it to be as painful. I think if the Cubs had just played at an 84 and 78 clip the whole year, I would have been like, well, this is a little disappointing, but it's kind of what I thought would happen. But to be right there and then have it all come crumbling down like that really hurt, because we just haven't been able to watch the Cubs in the playoffs for so long. Even though they were there in 2020, it didn't really feel real. And it's just so, I think those are some of the things that come to mind. But what about you?
Yeah, I think you nailed the two biggest highlights, obviously, and those were the kinds of highlights in terms of where they came in the season. Mike Tauchman, the summer of Tauchman, the Chicago area zone, Mike Tauchman, who's still on the team, by the way. Him getting to rob that game against the Cardinals, right? I somehow don't trust my own memory of how this year went, but that against the Cardinals, Morel walking off against the White Sox,
fully stripping,
against those two particular teams, and where it came in the midst of the Cubs really putting together a run of good play, it made it feel like one of those things where you can see it on the montage of the year. This is when you knew something special was going on. And then something special didn't go on.
Well, it's a little similar to the David Bodie moment in 2018, where you're like, this is going to be one of those things that if and when the Cubs get to or win the World Series, we're going to be like, yeah, that was the moment. And it was a great moment, but it doesn't always turn out that way.
Yeah, and it's a great thing about baseball and sports in general when you can get those all-time memorable moments in seasons that really don't go your way otherwise. I guess I will say I did you're absolutely right that it was more painful to do the season the way they did it. Very old school Cubs of them to go that route with it. But I guess I was more interested in the peaks and the valleys than I would have been with the baseline, because an 83 win baseline is arguably, I guess it's less boring than a 78 win baseline, but it is it is high level boring. It is it is you're not terrible enough to be that interesting, and you're not good enough to be that interesting. So I thought in a nice way, they made this mediocre season as interesting as it probably could be. I guess it included a collapse.
Yeah, right. It was one of those typical things where you're like, if I had gone back in time and told myself in mid-September the Cubs are going to have this record and they're going to be, right in the mix for a playoff spot, would you take that or would you not? Of course you would take it. But knowing the way it played out and just feeling like they really biffed it, to use your word. Like I think they were,
Yeah.
what was it? I think in early September they had a 94% chance of making the postseason, and then just frittered it away. I mean, they're that's it's still like painful to think about some of those games where they were right there. The series in Arizona with that weird like, who is it? I think Wisniewski got like hit by a line drive. It went up in the air. Swanson like let it drop in a way that made you think he didn't realize that it hadn't touched the ground
Yeah.
already. Like it was just, there were so many weird things. And honestly, that I feel like things really turned during that Labor Day weekend series against the Reds, where the Cubs had that makeup game. They ended up splitting the series, but I think there were two blown saves in that series. And that was one of those times where you were like, I'm not feeling great about this. Then you have Alzolay go out, and I think that
Mhm.
didn't help. Not that he really would have had a lot of save opportunities anyway, as it turns out, but there were just these little moments here and there that you could start to feel it coming apart. But I still would not have. I would not have thought about. The Suzuki moment is. I hope people don't talk about that a lot, but that one's that's pretty
Yeah,
tough.
the missed fly ball in right field in Atlanta, and it's just, there's 162 games, and you sort of think if Suzuki just catches that ball like he does literally more than 99 out of 100 times, and if Dansby Swanson catches that ball, they're in the playoffs. Like
Hmm.
that, like if it's 162 games, if those two balls are caught, I think literally the Cubs are in the playoffs.
Right. Well, and I mean, the Diamondbacks obviously proved themselves to be a very good team. They got all the way to the World Series. They've got a really strong core and a young team. But the fact that the Cubs played 7 games against the Diamondbacks with an opportunity to, like, even if you go 3-4, you probably bury them. But the
Hmm.
fact that they lost 6 of 7, it's just like it just can't happen.
It can't happen, and it doesn't happen if you're a better team, So
Hmm.
it is a thing where okay, I guess justice was served because the Diamondbacks proved that they were the better team than the Cubs in those 7 games, and that carried its way out and through and into the playoffs and stuff. As far as memorable highlights go, and not even just highlights, I guess, but things that I will remember from this year. Uh, the series against Atlanta is where I began to feel like Boog Shambi was becoming a Cub. The series against Atlanta at the
Mm.
end with you remember, we blew up on Braves Twitter quite a bit. Just
Oh yeah,
one of the worst Twitters on earth is
yeah.
Braves Twitter. Just horrendous, humorless, gross people like
Hmm.
out there who, because I think this happened when Acuna stole a base and they stopped in the middle of an inning
Yeah, they played
to,
a video montage in the 10th inning.
and it wasn't, and I forget exactly what the split was, but it wasn't to go 40-40. It wasn't to go 50-40. It was something that, yeah, hadn't been done specifically, but they'd already done these things before. And,
Hmm.
and we made reference, like plenty of people did on Twitter, like that was a little weird. This isn't why the Cubs lost, but just like, okay, that was
No.
strange. And also Boog and JD were talking about it. I really like it when JD does go in on something, and he was
Hmm.
pretty forceful about how he thought that was bullshit. And Boog agreed and sort of was teasing the next couple days, was sort of like riffing on that, like Acuna
Hmm.
took a walk to first and something, and he was like, we gonna stop for a montage now, or what's going on? And like he had a little edge to him in a way where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, he was sort of losing the national broadcaster
Hmm.
flavor, which I understand why he had, but that's not what your home team guy should be. And I
Right.
started to be like, all right, I love JD to pieces, Pat Hughes, obviously. I was starting to feel Boog at the end of the season, so I'll be curious to see if that carries over.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, it's seems silly sometimes to talk about the broadcasters as being that important, but like that's who we have to listen to for
Yeah.
all of these games that we watch. And like what I think I and you loved the most about Len Casper, like I like hearing his voice break. Like that
Hmm.
means that he is really excited about something that just happened. And I do think Boog is like, from a technical perspective, a very good broadcaster, but it's just not what you're looking for. Like the reason that Bulls fans love Stacey King is not because he's the best broadcaster in the world or the best color guy in the world. It's because he is clearly a homer. He is
Hmm.
clearly a huge Bulls fan, and
Yeah.
it makes it compelling to listen to because you know that you're listening to someone who, like you, is a fan of the team. Whereas for Boog, it does like I don't need to hear the excitement in his voice when the Braves hit a go ahead single. Like I don't need that.
When the other team does it. Yeah. And
Right.
that is a complaint I've seen from plenty of people on Twitter, that he seems sometimes equally as excited when the other team does well, which is what you do in a national
Mm-hmm.
broadcasted game. But yeah, that's not what you want in your local guy. And you
Yeah.
spend more time with your local baseball broadcasters than you do in any other
Mm-hmm.
sport. And they have more
Right.
time to sort of riff and talk and stuff. So I'm hopeful that that is transitioning us to Boog feeling more like one of our own next
I
year.
hope so. I mean, I think in terms of the on the field stuff, the big highlights for me are Justin Steele turning into an ace has got to be up there, and
Yeah, that San
Alzolay
Francisco
really
game specifically,
yes.
like
Oh yeah.
where 9 strikeouts when they needed it, and Justin Steele's turning into the Kyle Hendricks of the league because he's somehow finished, I think, fourth in Cy Young voting. Which, if you told us that before the year, we'd be like, "Fuck yes, it's absurd." Second is the only
Yeah.
acceptable thing there. But yeah, Justin Steele turning into an ace.
Yeah, and Alzolay really locking down the closer spot, which I hope if he's able to stay healthy, like I would like him to come into the season as the assumed closer. Like
Yeah,
I also want the Cubs to acquire other bullpen arms, but like I think he has earned that job.
right. No, I absolutely agree, and that's who I want to see close games. I think that was
And
something
a
that
great Twitter follow.
a great Twitter follow. He's like, Alzolay tweeted, I think, just the eyes looking emoji when they signed Council. And and he clearly about Cody, he just tweeted, like, just sign him. Or something, like, I forget
Yeah.
exactly what it was, but he's tweeting, just sign Cody,
Mhm.
which is funny. You don't ever see ball players, like, tweet like about something the front office should do.
Right.
But I love how pure of heart he is, and he and Steele have been like such good friends going back. I think they were even roommates for a bit. It's cool
Yeah.
to see one of them being the guy at the end, one of them being the guy at the beginning.
Right. I guess do we want to talk about like what our predictions were and
Sure.
how well we did?
Yes. So there was a moment in our season prediction podcast, which we did with Ken Schultz last year. Ken's always great on those, and he also did probably the most fun thing about our prediction episode. He gave us 29 reasons to be happy. 29 ways that like the Cubs make you happy and reasons to love this team, which I think
Hmm.
is great and important for me. I think also as I've gotten older, because as I've gotten older, I've found myself more connected to certain players and the people like inside the jersey, and I've had a more difficult time rooting for Laundry. So
Hmm.
it's been a tricky era for me as a Cubs fan in recent years for that reason. So I think it was a good thing that Ken highlighted
Yes.
that.
Of all of your eras, this
Yeah,
particular.
this is an era that you don't buy tickets to this era of my of Kev.
Yeah, the
um,
Cubs feel like they're in a real folklore situation
mhm.
here. It's a little
Yes.
grim.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's not a lot of peaks. We're sort of vibing out. We're gonna cry a little bit. Let's start with the first thing I said. I referred to how the choices the Cubs have made to this point have left them out on Shohei. I said that at the beginning of the year, so kudos to me on that.
Yeah.
Um, then MVP, Ken said Hap would be the MVP of the team. I said Hap would be the MVP of the team and that he would stay the whole year. So those were at least he did stay the whole year, and I didn't necessarily think he'd be extended. So that was a happy surprise.
Yeah.
And Hap was one of the better players on the team. I don't think you would say the MVP. Adam, you said you picked Nico for MVP.
I don't specifically remember doing that, and I'm wondering why I felt that way. I like Nico, but it's hard to make the case that he would ever be like the MVP of a team. I guess maybe I just felt like this was a year where we were going to see him like come into his own offensively more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think I was right about that. He had a perfectly good year, but
He's
he's nowhere near probably even the top 5 of like most valuable Cubs this year. But maybe he is war
he,
wise
I bet by WAR. I guess I can pull that
because
up.
of the defensive numbers and that infield. Talk about things that were fun to watch this year. Like man, the Swanson Nico infield is just a thing of beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to watch that team play defense. Um, the yeah, I think Nico was like top 5 or 6 on the team in
Yeah.
WAR. I want to say because of
Mm.
that defensive value,
Yeah.
but also like he is one of the reasons why I don't fully trust WAR. I guess because I just don't believe Kyle Schwarber is worth less than 2, hitting basically 50 bombs, getting on base 36% of the time, and when it, having 100 RBIs and runs scored. I don't believe that's worth as little as it is, and I
Right.
don't believe second base defense is worth as much as it is. According to Fangraphs, you were really close. Nico Horner was worth 4.7 Fangraphs WAR,
Damn.
which put him just behind Dansby Swanson and Justin Steele, who each had 4.9.
And Bellinger's not even on that list because of the timeout with an injury, I assume, or
Yeah, so Bellinger had like 140 less plate appearances than Nico, and he compiled 4.1.
right.
And then Ian Happ was right after that at 3.5, and Seiya Suzuki 3.2. And as something I think that might come as a surprise, Kyle Hendricks outvalued Marcus Stroman by point
Huh.
1.
Which you
After
certainly wouldn't have anticipated in the first half of the year.
no, exactly.
But yeah, I mean that middle infield. There's nothing more beautiful than a Nico to Swanson to dropped ball by Mancini at first. I mean, just it's the Tinkers to Evers to Chance for a new age.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, Tinker to Evers to missed chance over there,
Hey,
and at
there it
first
is.
base. We got it, folks. And Ken got a ton right. For breakout star, he specifically said, or for a person who would break out in a way we didn't expect this year. Ken said he was going with his heart, and he did pick Trey Mancini. Trey was a breakout of the major leagues, and he broke out of the team. And then,
I wish him well. He seems like a lovely man, but God, we played him too much.
yeah, we sure did. Man, a lot of ABs over at first
Hmm.
base. That while before concussion, Anthony Rizzo was over in New York doing great. So yeah, those were the MVP picks for regression. Do you remember who you picked for regression?
I think I probably would have picked Hap or Hendricks, would be my guess.
You picked Hendricks, which was totally reasonable, and I think we can say thankfully it didn't quite turn out that way. We've got
No.
Hendricks for another year, which is great, and he came back throwing harder than before. Touching 90 more than we've seen him
Yeah.
in a long time. I feel like, and that was great to see. I said my pick for regression was going to be Dansby Swanson, which he led the team in WAR, so it's hard to say got that right. I did specifically say he was going to offensively regress significantly from the year before, and that was correct. He was worth
Yeah.
12 less by weighted runs created plus. Dansby was only worth 4% above league average this year after he was 16% over. Last year, and he was doing great for a while, and then just like he went into a slump at a tough time.
Yeah, that's the problem is that the regression that we saw from him offensively, he regressed during the year and in the most crucial part of the season. And I don't think that that's representative of like, oh, that's the guy he is. Because we've seen him be incredibly clutch in big moments for, for the Braves in the playoffs and stuff like that. But yeah, it was not, there was a certain amount of things that kind of coalesced at a really bad time that all contributed to September being what it was.
Yeah, his slash line ended up being Dansby ended up hitting 244 with a 328 on base and 416 slugging, which is not great. The walk rate's solid.
Yeah.
Walk rate right there at 10. Strikeouts you can take at 24%. That's fine.
Right.
BABIP was way lower than the previous year, even though the shift was eliminated. So that's a little odd.
But 80 grade hair and stubble.
Great hair, great stubble, great vibes, leadership, defense. Dansby's good. No problems with Dansby. Ken's pick for regression, and this will come as no surprise. Jed Hoyer. Yes,
There it is.
he picked Jed Hoyer. And I mean, at this point in the offseason, I can't disagree.
He doesn't seem like he's getting better.
No, and I did say that Jed should. My prediction, I predicted in terms of regression that we would get to the deadline and Jed should sell and wouldn't have the stomach to sell again. Which I can. While that sort of happened, I can't give myself full credit for that because they weren't in a position where they should obviously sell.
Right.
they were better than that at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving myself a point there. For break we and for your breakout, do you remember who you picked to break out? You had a hitter and a pitcher.
I want to say Steele.
Yes,
Yeah.
you
So
did,
I guess I
and
got that one right.
you did. You picked Steele, and I said not only will he break out, but he will be 2024's opening day starter, which looks pretty solid at the moment.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I would love for him to not be because that means that the Cubs would go out and sign or trade for someone better than him. But
Right.
in terms of a hitter, breakout star, it would have to be someone who didn't have a particularly good year the previous year. Is it possible that I said like Mancini or Hosmer? I'm afraid that I did.
No, you said Mervis, who
Okay.
for breakout. Also, I guess like Star is putting it too strongly for what we're saying.
Just
We're
breakout
breakout
player,
player,
breakout
yeah.
candidate.
And Mervis really didn't get a lot of run, but the run he did get didn't quite work. Then he went back to AAA and hit very well. So who knows that he might maybe he'll end up being like a post hype dude some way this year. That would be a nice
Yeah.
thing to see. So you and I want to say we both went kind of 1 for 2. Well, you went a stronger 1 for 2 than I did because Steele absolutely busted out. I thought Wisniewski was going to run with that starting position.
Hmm.
Nope.
Well, he had a
Uh,
great spring training.
he did have it. Yeah, he was one of the few who did. And Steele didn't have a good spring training. So there you go. And then I said Seiya Suzuki. And in the second half, he was really breaking out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the few times that somebody sits for a couple days and then it's like someone snaps their fingers and they're good again.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, if we want to give David Ross credit for anything, assuming he was the one who made that decision, and maybe it was the higher ups who said like, "Hey, let's get him out of the lineup." But I forget exactly when that was, but I remember it because during that time that he was benched for a couple days, that's when we had our probably our favorite Seiya gif of the year, which is like who's it, Willie Harris or someone like stealing a ball from him and then him pretending to cry like a little kid until he got it back.
Yes.
And at the time, people were like, "Why is he joking around? He's in the middle of a slump. Like, how dare he smile?" It's like, shut the fuck up. He's trying to stay loose, which is what you want him to do. And then
Right.
he was really good. And I think that was the shittiest part about the dropped fly ball in Atlanta was like the Cubs would not have even been in a position to be that close to the playoffs if not for Seiya carrying the load offensively for a couple months. So for anybody who wanted to give him a bunch of grief for that, like obviously it is a ball that should be caught. He would tell you the same thing,
Of course.
but he was invaluable to the Cubs in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he obviously isn't. He didn't drop the ball because of a lack of preparation or lack of effort. This is shit happens sometimes. You
Hmm.
know, that's just how the world works. And he's so important to this team because one of my big problems with how this team has been constructed and how it seems like the narrative, even from the front office, is it's so concerned about raising a floor when I don't want to fucking talk about a floor. I want
Hmm.
to talk about a ceiling. What are we doing talking about floors here? And it is a team that is offensively has a lot of like solid-ish floors, but not a lot of ceiling to it. And
Hmm.
Seiya is really, maybe the guys in the lineup right now. Maybe you could say with Morel, with Ian a little bit, I guess, in terms of having a ceiling. Like Seiya's really one of the guys who most represents a possible breakout that way. He ended the year with 20 homers, 75 runs, 74 RBIs, walk rate of 10. That's great. Strikeout rate of 22. That's perfectly fine.
Hmm.
Slash line 285, 357, 485. That's a fucking great slash line. He ended the year
Yeah.
with a WRC plus of 126, 26% better than league average at creating runs. That's a really good offensive player.
Hmm.
And the second half of the year was way better than that rate. Even the second half of the year
Right.
was like a star rate. So that's something that, is something to be excited about going forward. So then we've got then I think we can do there were some weird general predictions. Adam,
Hmm.
this is one I think I can't prove that this didn't happen.
Is it the
Uh
Madrigal one?
No, what was that one? Do you remember that?
I believe my bold, weird prediction is Nick Madrigal is only going to hit 2 home runs all year, but he's going to hit them both in the same game.
Oh yeah, that's that. You know what? I like that as a flyer.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, I can prove that didn't happen, but he had a couple deep fly balls. I remember
Yeah.
those. You predicted that Wrigley would sell their first $20 beer this
Oh
year,
God.
which is a that's such a good shout because it doesn't matter what's going on the field. Prices go up at Wrigley,
Hmm.
even compared to the rest of the league. So, tweet at us if you ordered a $20
Yeah.
beer.
It wouldn't surprise me if there was a beer that was that much. If you got like a larger size of a craft beer or something like that, a little half acre for you.
Yeah, I think my personal record is 1850 for a beer at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So it's close.
The most offensive thing about the Barclays Center is that they now have a stand that's like a fake bodega, but
Oh
it's
Christ.
still everything just still costs $20.
It's so stupid. And if they don't have a live cat in there eating, sitting on
Exactly.
bread and eating mice, it's not a fucking bodega. So you also predicted that the Zachary Hotel would be torn down and replaced by the old McDonald's. And I really wish that came true. I've been in the
That's
Zachary.
funny.
It's a nice hotel.
I'm sure.
But that's a solid prediction. I predicted we would lose Stroman and Hap for nothing. Half right. So I got to give credit extending Ian Happ on a reasonable deal for
And
several
Nico.
years. And the Nico extension for 1 year, I'm not giving as much credit
Hmm.
for 1 year beyond when you had him. It's
But
fine.
buying him out of his arb years, right?
Sure. Yeah, adding
Yeah.
certainty to what you're paying. That's it's not a bad move. But
Hmm.
extending in his free agent year, extending Ian Happ 3 years of his prime,
Yeah.
that's an extension. That was real. I didn't see that coming. Did lose Stroman for nothing. Whatever. I mean, maybe. What if they just signed him back? It feels like that's impossible, but I keep forgetting that he is technically one of the top starters out on the market right now.
Yeah. No,
Isn't that
it's
weird?
it's hard to think of him coming back because I
I don't
don't think
think.
that he's going to take like a 1 year deal anywhere.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, my memory of Stroman will be like he was fine and somewhat of a complicated Twitter follow.
Exactly. Bye bye.
Yeah.
So that was that.
Love is
Um,
love, and also the Jews run the media. Like, what are you?
yeah, right.
Such a weird.
Parentheses
Yeah,
implied. Yeah, exactly. Like, all right, great. Marcus Stroman, you'd love to run him out on Pride Day,
right.
I guess, but not on
Well,
Hanukkah.
it's like the manager needs to like pull him after the first half of his tweets.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You need, yeah, he use him as an opener for tweets,
Right. Give him the hook.
basically. Exactly. Quick hook there on the keyboard for Stroman. And then I guess we predicted the number of wins the Cubs would have. Ken predicted 75. I predicted 78. Do you remember how many wins you predicted?
I do because I think I was one off. I feel like because the Cubs they won 83 was it
Yeah.
their final record. I believe I predicted 84 and 78, and I also specifically said like they'll be just good enough to stay in the mix, but not good enough to make the playoffs.
You really, I guess technically by one win you could have been more accurate, but both with that prediction, yes, you predicted the Cubs would win 84 games, and the way you described it in our season preview was, it turns out you didn't have to watch the year. It was exactly
Yeah,
that. You
and
said
I
they
wasted
would.
a lot of time.
And God, haven't we always? It is, yeah. It was exactly correct. It was that they would clearly not be good enough to really do damage, and that they would miss the last playoff spot, and you got that exactly right.
But they were good enough to get people in the seats drinking those 1850 beers. And so why improve the product when we can keep having people spend their money and you don't have to pay anybody?
Nope, not yet. At least we'll drop in, and we're recording this a few days before we're releasing it, so we'll drop in with a quick edit if the Cubs really shock us here. But
I mean, if Ken had his way, the Jed Hoyer era would end like the film Rookie of the Year, where not only is Jed fired, but then he is hired as a hot dog vendor, agrees to take the job, which is the funniest part of that whole bit. It's like
yeah,
he says like, "Sure, I'll do that job."
Yeah. How deep is he in like black market gambling that he needs to take the hot dog gig after you've been a major executive? More insane than a physical malady making you throw 100 miles an hour as a
Yes. Oh
child,
yeah.
but easily.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So I think that, I mean, that was all the predictions we made, the specific predictions we made for the year. And, you know, that pretty, we weren't that fooled. I don't think.
No.
And
No,
it
and I
makes,
would have loved to have been wrong. I would have when they were where they were at in early September and it looked like they were going to win 90 plus games and get into the playoffs. I would have been thrilled to have been wrong.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess in terms of things that happened that that I didn't see coming. I don't think I really didn't think David Ross was going to be gone
No.
after that year, especially if you told me they won 83.
Well, I think it's because of the way that they crumbled down the end. I think I firmly believe that even if the Cubs get to the playoffs and lose in the the wild card round and lose 2 games in a row and they get knocked out, I don't think you make the change. I think that if Ross had still gotten them there, um, it would have been a really tough sell to be like, yeah, sorry, thanks for getting this team that probably shouldn't have even been in the playoffs to the playoffs. And I think the way I feel about Ross is how I feel about any manager, which is like, if you're going to give them, if you're going to blame them for the bad stuff, it's also fair to give them credit for the good stuff. If you think that they have an
Yeah.
impact on things. And I do think that Ross is somebody who's well liked. And I think that when the Cubs, I believe it was in Anaheim, was kind of their like low point of the season, they were like 26-36 in early June and things looked
Hmm.
pretty bleak. And I do give Ross credit for keeping control of the group and keeping everybody level headed presumably and saying like, hey, we're not this bad, like let's just stay focused and try to write this thing. And again, it was all these ups and downs where like in that series in London they win the first game, now they're 1 game below 500, they're like on the cusp of getting back to it, and then the Mancini play happens and
Right.
everything comes crumbling down again. They lose a bunch of games. And at that time, I was thinking, like, I don't think there's any chance the team gets back to 500. And then they do get back to 500. They play even better. They make some trades. And Candelario, like, didn't do that much. Jose Cuas, I believe, only has a left arm at this point. But yeah, it was a weird year. And I think that, like, to your point earlier, it would have been a lot more boring if they had just played at an 83 and 78 clip the whole year. It wouldn't have provided the same highs and lows, but I don't know. I guess the last week of the season proved to me that I can still be hurt.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways that's, in some ways it's good to know you can still feel. I mean, that's something I've struggled with, obviously. Like I remember, you know, yeah, I remember 2017, like how spent I was after the game you went to in person, the
Hmm.
game 5, insane game 5 against the Nationals, and
Yeah.
being like happy that I cared that much still
Hmm.
after they won in 2016. So, sometimes that can be a nice reminder that like, oh,
Yeah.
that sucked. Things can still suck. By that implication, things can still be great then,
Hmm.
in theory. Um, yeah, so I guess end of David Ross era. That was a surprise of 2023. What a weird managerial era. Going from being
Very weird.
World Series hero, carried off the field, coming in during the COVID year,
Right.
winning the division in a weird way, and then like overseeing the sell off of everybody, and then this year, and then it's a strange
Yeah.
a
And now
strange
being
era.
carried off the field kicking and screaming
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Carried off by a fucking dump
against his
truck.
will.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. So, man, I guess that's the end of our predictions. Anything else? Anything else you want to say looking back at 2023 about this in this season wrap up?
I'll give you another highlight.
Sure.
How about Pat Hughes being inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame?
It's a great highlight.
Yeah.
It's a great highlight. I'm so glad he didn't get the Ron Santo treatment. I'm so glad.
Hmm.
Hopefully, Pat Hughes never dies. Hopefully, he's here for
Yeah.
for the rest of time. But uh, I'm very glad he got to receive that honor. Still in still in his prime. Still,
Hmm.
he's still in his announcer prime. No matter
Yeah.
how many years he has left, no one's doing it better than that guy today.
No.
So it is that's a great highlight that Pat Hughes, a real fucking all-time Cub, got to go into the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame this year.
He's the only person for whom I'm open to the idea of them AI generating his voice when he dies. Hopefully
Yeah.
40 years from now, but
Yes, I to keep it around, just if even if just to do ads, like
Mhm.
just same.
North Shore adult diapers.
It's crazy how much the year 2023 that advertisement sticks in my head. Appropriate,
Yeah.
I guess, but yeah. All right.
Yeah, other than that, I mean, I do think that it's incredibly cool to see Justin Steele become what he's become, especially like, we don't
Mhm.
know the guy, but we've had him on the pod a couple times. And just always has seemed like a really nice and hardworking guy and somebody who, like, it's the same way as like comics we know, right? Who like don't pop off when they're young and then like they stick around and they work really hard and then they get their chance. And you're like, yeah, I'm happy for this person.
Yeah. Hopefully, Justin Steele can be the Roy Wood of baseball that way a little bit.
Yeah, I like that.
To reference another guy we've had on the show on our podcast here, Roy Wood, a guy who seems to be finally getting the recognition as like one of the best comics in America, which he is, and he's a huge Cubs fan, and I think he's doing some work on MLB now. I just saw
Yeah,
too.
he hosted some sort of award ceremony and he had a whole bit about how wearing gold chains makes you faster.
That's what it has seemed that way.
Yeah.
Looking out at that field.
Also, I don't even remember the timing of this, but like, remember the time we got to interview Joe Madden? That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Yeah, was that this year? I think it was.
I don't think
this year.
so, no, because I was
No?
still in Astoria, so it had to have been like the
Okay.
year before last. But yeah, sometimes I just think about that. I'm like, I think that's a thing that happened. Did I make that up?
Yeah. No, that was great. That
Shot in a beer.
shot in a beer, baby. Best Cubs manager of our lifetime.
But I do want to be clear that it's not great that some of my top highlights for the past season are Pat Hughes, a broadcaster being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and an interview that happened 2 seasons ago. Like it's not a good sign.
the best thing of 2023. Well, in 2021, stop. Well, fucking, it's different here. Hashtag whatever.
I really enjoyed seeing the Brewers lose in 2 games. That was really fun.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
spite highlights from the year were pretty
Yeah.
decent. The
hmm
Astros bowing out was pretty great.
Cardinals being absolute shit. Really fun.
Cardinals being full on dog shit, awful, was amazing. We're after talking about Cubs managers having Dusty Baker, bye bye Dusty, he's gone now.
hmm
The Astros crashed their way out of the playoffs. That was great. Cardinals bottom of the just sucked all year in a way we couldn't imagine. Their best player was Wilson Contreras. Doesn't surprise us. Yeah, the Mets weren't good.
Yeah, Mets and Yankees missed the playoffs. That's fun.
That's good stuff. Yeah, some good spite, some good spite highlights this year,
Yeah, yeah.
at least.
But yeah, overall, it's like I. It's hard to really classify the year as a success, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like I guess it's technically a little better than we thought, or like right around what we thought it would be. But I would agree that with what Jed Hoyer and Tom Ricketts said after the season, which is like we cannot allow ourselves to frame a year that we missed the playoffs as a success. And I think that I hope they remind themselves of that this offseason a bit more.
I do too. It seems like, all right, you say that, and then you have to get better. You understand than what this was, unless they just get Men in Blacked memory
Right.
wise and have no
Yeah, yeah.
no idea what this was.
Talk about it, be about it. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Do it, and hopefully we'll have more of that going into next
Let's
year.
put Tom's money where Jed's mouth is. How about that?
Let's put yeah. Can we and for our friend can we put someone else's mouth where Jed's mouth is? Not to kiss him, but to replace it would
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
would be nice. So, cool. Well, that's all I got. 2023, the Cubs. We did it. we were there the whole time.
Yep.
Thanks
It was
for
a
listening.
thing that happened.
It was. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. That's Adam Mamawala. Follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and all the things. And are there anything you want to plug on our way out here, Adam?
Nah, I'm good. What do you got?
Nothing. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.